Hey everybody, what's up? It's Andrew Martin from Andrew Martin Energy here with your May 2019 update video. I hope that wherever you are happy and healthy and smiling. I have to say that this month has been so weird. It's been such a strange experience this month. I mean, fuck, this whole year has just been a weird, whopper, strange, surreal experience. And, I don't think it's going to get any less weird anytime soon. So I think more than anything, it's about learning how to exist and learning how to thrive within this strange, surreal, shifting environment that we live in, rather than trying to stop it or, put the brakes on or go back to an old way of being. We just got to accept what is. Which kind of brings me to the theme of this month's video. Don't you like that segue, how I did that? And this month's video is all about surrender. The thing that I am very aware of lately is that nothing out here really seems to make sense right now. I'm going through all these changes, and as always, I can use my own experience as an example of what's going on right now, and my hope is always that my experience resonates with you. A lot of things don't make sense right now, right? It's like, one minute I have something that I think is, complete, and that I think is clear, and that I think is true. And then the next minute I'm in the midst of some sort of chaotic experience where something is imploding, or something's, leaving or coming in or shifting or whatever. And it feels like we're always on this sort of moving, unstable ground. And in many ways we are. Right now we are going through so much on so many levels simultaneously that it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's not really clear. Should I stay? Should I go? Is this supposed to be downtime and inner work? Or should I be moving forward and being active and getting my hands in it, right? Should I be in my feminine self, which is the stillness, or should I be in my masculine self, which is sort of the active, forward moving energy? What makes sense? What is real? What is true? And I often find that if I'm stuck in my head about it, the mind just gets overwhelmed and just wants to shut it down. But the one thing that never fails, the one thing that always makes sense, the one thing that I can always count on, is that inner place where I connect to my creator self, to my true self. That inner place where I open up and allow the fullness of all that I am to emerge into my field and move into this experience called Andrew as I merge more deeply with this true self. And that is all surrender, my friends. The only way that happens is through surrender. And as a stubborn motherfucker with a will of iron, right? Once I make up my mind and I clamp down on something and I clench in and I get, all of my 12,000 planets in Virgo moving in the same direction, man, you would be hard pressed to ever change my mind. And in fact, the only thing that has ever gotten me to change my mind in this life is for when I fall time and time again, when I struggle, when I suffer, when I beat my head against the wall until it is bloody and I finally go, wait a minute. Maybe there's an easier way. Maybe there's a level of awareness that have the answers that I seek. Maybe it's not out here. Maybe it's in here. Maybe it's about just being compassionate and kind with myself and just being present and allowing my experience to be what it is right now, even when it's tough and it's scary and it's stressful and it's painful. And the only way that happens is through surrender. Surrender is a conversation that we have a lot in our spiritual experience, right? It's one of those buzzwords that we throw around all over the place, almost to the point where it's sort of lost meaning. But here's how I think of surrender. Surrender is the first step in creating something new. Surrender is the first step in change. Surrender is the first step in healing. Surrender is the first step in alchemy and transmutation. Surrender is the only way I'm ever gonna get shit done. And here is what I mean. I used to have a house cleaning business years and years ago. I was a housekeeper and I had my own business. And surrender, when I think about and talk about the idea of surrender, this is the perfect example. When I'm cleaning someone's home, I walk into the house, and what's the first thing I do? I accept it as it is. I look around and I go, okay, dirty mirrors, dirty floors, dirty walls, dirty fridge, dirty whatever, gotta scrub that, gotta vacuum that, gotta dust that, gotta use this there, right? Until I surrender, accept, acknowledge what is in front of me, how on earth am I ever going to make a plan for what's next? How on earth am I ever going to find my way through it? How on earth am I ever going to get up to that next level that is calling me forward until I surrender to what's in front of me? Surrender doesn't mean I like it. Surrender doesn't mean I want it to continue any longer than it has to. Surrender doesn't mean that I am co-signing and saying, yes, I love this, let's do more of this. Surrender just means that I am no longer in resistance to my experience, and it is resistance and only resistance that creates suffering. Pain is part of the human experience. Suffering is optional. So I talked about this video in the May energy transmission, the excavating the self. And I talked about this video and I mistakenly attributed it to Joe Dispenza, although he's amazing. But the video actually was Bruce Lipton, who I also love. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, and if you are not familiar with these two gentlemen, check them out because they are really, really insightful and are creating amazing content and presenting next level information, which I believe is really the bridge between spirit and science. And they are moving in the direction that we are going to finally see and accept that there is no divide between spirit and science. We're both heading in the same direction. I digress. In this video, and I talked about this briefly in not briefly, it was actually sort of a big thread in the May video. This idea of the identity of self being a thought form. The personality is a thought form. The personality does not exist. I can't touch the personality. It's not tangible. I can't point and look at it. The personality, the concept of self, the idea of Andrew is nothing but a collection of memories and experiences. And I took this idea even further, and this idea was inspired by this video that Bruce Lipton recorded, and that was that we know, not only do we not have a personality, or that Andrew doesn't really exist, we don't even really have a body. What we have is 7 trillion cells that have agreed to be a part of this experience called Andrew. We have 7 trillion individual cells, individual conscious, aware beings. A cell is a being. And all 7 trillion, which by the way, I think it's so insane that we have more cells in our body individually than there are people on the earth. Think about that for a minute. I mean, that's fucking crazy. But that we have 7 trillion individual cells, individual units, individual beings that have said, you know what? I am going to surrender my will and my intent. I am going to surrender, give up my individual will, my individual agenda, my individual intention to serve a higher purpose. And that purpose is all 7 trillion of these cells have acknowledged that they are surrendering their individual intent to become this being called Andrew. And I have 7 trillion individual beings cooperating collectively for the duration of this experience called Andrew, whether that's 70 years or 140 years. I think it's going to be closer to 140 personally. All of these cells have said, yes, I will do this. I will serve a purpose that is greater than the sum of its parts, that is bigger than just one individual cell. And isn't that a perfect model, right? Because the universe is fractal. Every experience is a micro or a macro of something else. Wait, no, that's macro and micro of something else. So here I am as an individual cell. And what I am being asked to do is to surrender the will and the intent of Andrew as the separate being, as the ego being, as the being who is only human and that's it. And he's born and he lives and then he dies. I have been called to surrender that and to align myself to surrender to a greater purpose, which is me, which is the will of my creator self. And I surrender that individual, right? And what I'm talking about here is the individual requirements and the needs of the mind and the ego are nothing but limitation. When I live my life only according to what's going on up here, man, I have a small, finite, very, sure, it might be amazing relatively, right? I can look at someone else's life and go, oh my God, that's amazing. Look at what they're experiencing. But I guarantee you that if I'm only looking at my life through the lens of the mind, of the human self, of the mind and the ego, I am selling myself so short. I am minimizing my experience in ways that I don't even understand. And until I finally surrender to that higher calling, I will never break through the barrier of that limitation of my singular, separate, individual human experience. Do you feel me? Where we are right now is we are all being called to surrender to our greater self. We are being called to surrender to our creator self, which is the self that chose this experience to begin with. We are all being called to let go. And that's really what surrender is letting go of everything that isn't you anymore. And if you don't believe me that thoughts and beliefs and ideas and stories don't change, I used to have this boyfriend years ago in my mid to late 20s. And we used to get in this argument all the time. And he would say, people don't change. People are who they are. They are essentially the way that they are when they're born to the way that they are until they die. And they never grow. They never change. They're just always the same. And this idea used to blow my mind. And I would think to myself, how can this man who has such an amazing, creative, brilliant mind be so limited in the way that he perceives the world? And if you don't believe me that your beliefs have changed, then tell me that you still believe in Santa Claus. Tell me that you still believe in the Tooth Fairy. Tell me that you still believe in the Easter Bunny. And tell me that you still believe that storks bring babies. Because I know at some point in your life, at least one of those examples that I just shared with you, you believed it with all your heart. And at your 4-year-old self, that was gospel. That was truth, man. The fat, jolly guy in the red suit and the white beard is going to come down the chimney and leave me my gifts, or whatever, your version of Christmas was. So beliefs change. And when we are at a crossroads and at a threshold of evolving, of growing up, of leveling up our awareness and our experience, what do we have to do? We have to surrender the beliefs and the stories and the patterns that are no longer compatible with who we are becoming. We have to let go in order to move up. It's what I've been saying about the block. It's not a block, it's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone requiring you to level up your awareness, to see through a higher perspective, to fly up and see through, oh my God, now I see it, right? I have context. I can see the whole picture. But I'm never going to level up until I surrender to what I am being asked to let go of. And that is when it gets painful. Is when I try to filter through the mind, but why do I have to let go of this? And what's on the other side of it? And what's going to happen if I do? And what's going to happen if I don't? There's no way of knowing. The only way you're going to know is by doing it. The only way you're going to know is by surrendering. The only way you're going to know is by being that individual self to say, you know what? There's a bigger purpose here. There's a higher way here. There is something greater than just the needs of my little mind. And the only way I'm going to access that is if I say yes to it. And in order to say yes to it, I have to surrender to it. You are you in the same way that the cell is you, which is to say that you're not really you at all. Just like those cells, you are part of a greater body. The body of the creator self, the body of the soul self, the body of source. And as we grow and expand and create more room for our creator self to descend, the requirements of what we give up continue. This isn't a one and done thing, right? Like all relationships, our relationship with ourself is ongoing. We don't just get to the point where we take our bra off and we say, okay, now I'm done, right? There is no finish line. There is no finish line. There is only a conscious, eternal, infinite expansion and moving outward, right? We are always expanding. We are always becoming. And in order to become what I am becoming, I got to let go of what I was. I got to let go of what I've never been. So this whole passage is all about you surrendering the needs, the requirements, the whims of the ego, of your individual self. Because the ego is the only part of the self that sees itself as individual, by the way, right? The creator self knows that there is no difference. There is no separation. There is no separation between you and me. There is no separation between me and this pen. There is no separation between you and the things that you want. And until we surrender to that higher calling, we will continue to experience the limitations that are inherent in the story that we are currently telling. I can't tell the story of me being a victim without playing out the part of the victim. I can't tell the story of me being unlovable without living as one who is unlovable. I can't tell the story of being the total fucking asshole without living as one who's a total fucking asshole. Do you get it? It is the story that the mind is telling you is what creates our experience, because that's the lens that we look through. Where we are on the planet right now, at this point in time in our experience, is we are being called to connect to and to get to know and to rely on the only thing that ever makes sense, or the one thing that always makes sense, which is the connection to the creator self, the connection to the greater self, the connection to the one, to the whole. And this is the reason that stillness, that silence, that inner work, that quieting the mind, that going in and being introspective and seeing what's going on in your inner landscape and learning how to navigate that and traverse that. This is why it is so important, because that's the only way you get to know your creator self. Think about your relationships, right? Let's bring this back to the relationship again. Your relationship with your family, your loved one, your friends, we're assuming, of course, for this example, that this is a positive relationship that's healthy and that you love. But even a negative relationship is going to require this of you, or a contentious relationship is going to require this of you. You got to be present. You got to be there. How are you going to have an amazing relationship if you don't put in the work? How are you going to have an amazing relationship if you're not present, if you're not listening, if you're not focused in, if you are not asking questions, if you are not hearing the answers, if you are not taking time to dedicate yourself to this relationship? It's the same thing with your relationship with your creator self. Your relationship with yourself is ongoing. It is eternal. And right now, you just so happen to be experiencing it through the lens of whoever you are, right? My relationship with my creator self is currently being experienced through Andrew, but it is infinite and it continues to go on. But how are we ever going to have a healthy, balanced, functional relationship unless we're putting in the work? I can't continue to ignore and deny you and not pay attention to you and brush you aside and think of you as unimportant if I want to have a good relationship with you. So this is why right now things seem a little weird and they seem a little funky and they seem a little topsy-turvy, because we are in the midst of a lot of stuff transforming. So out here is less stable than it has ever been. And that's actually a good thing, because chaos is always a sign that we're in the midst of transformation. Chaos is always evidence that I'm on the bridge. I'm on the bridge from who I was to who I'm being. We collectively are on the bridge from the world that is falling apart to the world that we are actively creating. There is a transitional period. And that transitional period is always chaotic. It's always fraught with danger and, risk. It's like childbirth, right? You got to go through this whole experience of childbirth, of pushing it out, this, painful, scary, chaotic, oftentimes life-threatening experience that doesn't really make sense. And, but what do? You come back to the breath. You come back to the stillness. You come back to the point. You come back to the focus. You come back to your partner. That's where we are. Your relationship with yourself is so crucial right now, because that's the thing that's going to carry you forward. That's the thing that you're going to create from. There are layers of self that offer you access to levels of awareness that you don't even know exist right now. I promise you, if you are still in a physical body, there is more learning to do. There is more growing to do. There is more expanding to do. There is more surrendering to do. Recently, I had a myofascial release session with this woman, Shelly Choi. She's amazing. I mentioned her on my Instagram. I'll put her information, I'll put her Instagram in the comments. She's here in LA. But I recently had a myofascial session with her. My body had been asking for this. Several weeks ago, I kept hearing this message, myofascial release, myofascial release, myofascial release. And I was like, okay, I've never had that before. I've done like trigger point therapy and release therapy, but I've never had a myofascial session where it's like, moving through the body and manipulating the fascia at large. So I had my session with her several days ago. It was this past Sunday. And it was one of the most powerful physical experiences I have ever had in my life. It was excruciating. It was so painful. I screamed and cursed and yelled a lot. I also cried a lot. And I also released a lot. And I also healed a lot. But the one thing that allowed all of this to happen was, you guessed it, surrender. And surrender on all counts, right? The voice, the message, myofascial release, myofascial release, myofascial release. I could have ignored that. I could have brushed it aside. I could have said, whatever, I don't even know what that is. I could have just ignored that and turned it into something that wasn't really meaningful or whatever, but I listened, I surrendered, and I said, okay, I'm going to be curious about this. And so I posted it on my Instagram and I said, hey, I'm, looking for someone who can do myofascial release, yada, yada, yada. Got an email from Shelly. I stared at that email for a week before I even got back to her. I was still in resistance. I still wasn't surrendering to the thing that I had been calling in for myself. Finally, I did. Finally, I surrendered and I responded back to her. And then we booked an appointment and she came in and she did the work, and there was a point. Every single time we would reach this point, and she told me this, she said, there's going to come a point in the work where we are pushing through, trying to get the fascia to open up, trying to work through the scar tissue and get it to open up. And she said, there's going to be a point when you are going to want to stop. She said, there's going to be a point when the pain is going to be so intense that you are going to want to back away. She said, that is the point when you need to continue to push forward. She said, and I will not push your body into a dangerous place. I will not ask more of your body than it is capable of doing. She said, and we established a safe word so that if I didn't feel like I could actually handle it or if I wasn't quite ready, I had an out. So I felt safe and everything was set up. But the one thing that was required of me was surrender. And I am telling you, there was that point several times in the session where it got to the point where I thought I was going to lose my mind because the pain was so intense. And in that moment, I just took a breath and I focused on the spot where her hand was in my back or my shoulder or whatever it is. And I breathed into it and I just surrendered. I collapsed under the weight of that pain. I felt myself move into that field of pain. And guess what? On the other side of that surrender was the release, and I cried, like deep cry, like purging shit from hundreds of years. Like this wasn't just my lifetime. This was multiple lifetimes. This was my lineage. This was my family line. This was so much stuff that I had been hanging on to that I didn't even really realize I was hanging on to until it was gone. And on the other side of this session, it's been 3 days? Today's Wednesday. I had my session on Sunday. It's been 3 days since I have had that. And I cannot tell you, I am sleeping better than I have slept in years, decades. I am more aware of my body, and the sense of spaciousness and the sense of relief and ease that is in my body is unbelievable to me. And I didn't even realize how much pain I was hanging on to. Here's the tea. Humans are so adaptable. We're so adaptable that not only are we able to adapt to positive circumstances, we are equally as able to adapt to negative circumstances. And we so often get so wrapped up in the illusion of the mind and believing what the mind is telling us that we don't even ever stop to say, wait a minute, is this all I can be? Is this all I can have? Is this as good as it gets? And if I'm asking that question up here, the answer is always, yeah, this is as good as it gets, girl. Just be quiet and go do your thing. But when I drop into here and I ask the question of my creator self, when I have that inner dialogue with myself and I say, really, is this as good as it can get? That's where I really begin to access that true knowledge. But until I surrender to the fact that there is a level of self that is far greater and far more powerful and far more massive than anything that Andrew could ever conceive of, I'm never going to allow myself to access it. Recently, I have these 2 gas heaters in my apartment. And their pilot lights are really, really loud. They're wall heaters. And it's been warming up here in Los Angeles, so several days ago I turned them off. And I cannot tell you, the thing that blew my mind and that I was so surprised was how loud they were. And in that moment, as I turned them off, I was so aware suddenly of, oh my God, that stillness, that silence, that spaciousness. It's the same thing as I had in that myofascial release. Today I worked out at the gym, and it was the first day that I had worked out since I had had this session. And I was astounded at how much stronger my body is. I was astounded at how much more open and spacious and like sizable I felt. Right? I just felt like I take up so much more room now. I inhabit this space. I feel so much brighter and so much clearer and so much more space. Like I emptied myself out. But unless I had surrendered to the impulse for the myofascial release, and then surrendered again to responding to Shelly's email, and then surrendered again to getting over my fear and anxiety and booking a session, and then surrendered again to allowing myself to move through the pain rather than stopping at the threshold of it, I would not be having this miraculous next level experience within my physical vessel that I am currently having. Do you see? The only reason you are ever asked to give up anything is because you don't need it anymore. The only reason we ever have the experience of losing something is because it is complete within our experience, and to complete the lesson, letting it go is the final stage of that, right? Just letting it go. And then what does that do? That creates a space for the newer thing, the bigger thing, the clearer thing, the thing that is the more you to come in. So that's the message. That's it. It's all about surrendering to you. And I have a workshop coming up Sunday, May 19th and Sunday, May 26th. It's a 2-part workshop. It's 2 Sundays, the 19th and the 26th from 12 to 2 p.m. It is entitled Meeting Your Creator Self. And this class is all about connecting with your creator self. I give you tools, I give you tricks, I give you methods of connecting with yourself, of learning how to communicate with this version of yourself or with this layer of your awareness. There's going to be meditation, there's going to be there's going to be energy work. It is an amazing class, and I love teaching this class. So I have that coming up. I'll put the link in the description. But this is where it's at. The very thing that we are often so afraid to accept and acknowledge and have the experience of is the very thing that unlocks the stuff that we are so desperate for and are so longing for. And I promise you that whatever it is you're asking to give up, there is a point, there is a purpose, there is a reason. And you may not know what that point and what that purpose and that reason is, but I promise you that it is calling you to a clearer, fuller, more dynamic expression of who and what you really are. And it holds so much power for you. I am astounded at how strong and how stable and how at ease I feel in my body on the other side of that myofascial experience. But if I had listened to the mind who was saying, oh my God, this is not safe. You don't know her. She came to you from Instagram. Can you trust her? But, it was all this fear porn chatter. Just da-da-da-da-da-da. It didn't mean anything. And if I had not stopped and really listened to that and really tuned in and felt it, not think it, feel it, right? Okay, I got this email, right? I can have my thought process. I got this email. This woman is saying, okay, so I'm thinking about it. Should I do it? I don't know. Let's see. So then I ask the question, I drop in. Okay. This woman, Shelly, came to me through the request that I put on Instagram. I'm thinking about booking a session with her. I think that she could be the one to do my myofascial release session. And as I'm saying this, I'm listening with my body, I'm listening in here, and I did not feel one flicker of resistance. I did not feel one flicker of there's something that you should be, concerned about, or there's a reason that maybe you shouldn't do this. It was so open and so clear to me. And so I surrendered to it. And if you are in the midst of something that you don't know how to surrender to, or if you're in the midst of something that you're not clear on, that's where I come in. That's how I can help. I'm still offering one-on-one sessions. I do have spots available in the Mastery Mentorship Program. All of my rates for all of my sessions, individual and the mentorship program, have all been reduced until further notice because I'm in the process of revamping and recrafting my offerings. But as we speak now, I am still taking one-on-one appointments, and I do have a couple of spots in my mentorship program. So this is what it's all about, my friends. The most important relationship you will ever have is the relationship with yourself. And that self is banging on the door and has been for quite some time. And it's not going away. It's not going away. It can't. Because you are it. And it is you. You can't escape yourself. And the self that's coming for you is the one that knows how powerful you are. The self that's coming for you knows what you came here to do. The self that's coming for you has the purpose and has the soul agreement and has all the information that you need. And when you don't have the information, or you don't have the strength, or you don't have the courage, or you don't have the clarity or the wherewithal to even understand how you're going to go on one more day, that's when you stop and you lean back into it and you say, okay, self, I'm not sure. I'm not clear. I need your help. I need your guidance. I need your support. So you take a moment, you take a breath, you find that stillness, and you reset. So that's it. Surrender to yourself. Because until you do, nothing else is going to happen. Until all of your awareness is congruent and moving in the same direction, you are going to be scattered and splintered and chaotic. And the one way that you can get clear on what's going on and that you can really tap into that infinite well of wisdom and insight and information is through here. But you got to be willing to surrender the agenda of the little one that lives up here. So that's it, my friends. Thank you as always for watching. I'm going to put all of the links and all the descriptions in the bottom here. So Meeting Your Creator Self, Sunday, May 19th and 26th from 12 to 2 p.m. both days. So it's 4 hours total. You get an MP3. There's going to be homework. I love doing these workshops and I'm so excited for this one. I'm still doing one-on-one sessions. I'm still doing my mentorship program. If you want to see the full video of everything that I do, go to Patreon. You know that. Otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. That's it. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.